Stick around because by the end of this video, I'll expose the shocking family secret that ties the single mother to the paralyzed billionaire CEO. Their pasts collide in a way that leads to a passionate, emotional reunion you won't forget. But just when you think everything is falling into place, an unbelievable twist happens that changes everything. You'll be left speechless, and trust me, you won't believe what's about to unfold next.
The iron gates of the Harrow mansion towered before Maya Collins, ornate and imposing against the gray New York sky. Her fingers tightened around her 6-year-old son's small hand as the security guard examined their credentials. The weight of her single suitcase seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment. "Mommy, is this where we're going to live now?" her son whispered, wide-eyed at the sprawling estate that stretched beyond his comprehension. Maya nodded, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her tired eyes. "For now, sweetie, for now. Sometimes destiny offers you a choice that isn't really a choice at all. When you're down to your last $20, when the eviction notice is taped to your door, when your child looks up at you with hungry eyes, the word choice becomes nothing more than a cruel joke. Have you ever had to make an impossible decision that would change your entire life? Have you stood at the crossroads of desperation and opportunity, knowing that walking through certain doors might save you while simultaneously trapping you? Maya couldn't have known then, as she crossed the threshold into the marble-floored foyer of tech billionaire Vincent Harrow's world, that within those walls waited not just a job, but the answers to questions she never knew to ask. She couldn't have foreseen the moment, 6 months later, when she would stand in Vincent's study, a yellowed photograph trembling in her hands, her world crumbling around her as she whispered, "This man, standing next to your father, it's my husband's father." The man in the wheelchair across from her, once powerful enough to move markets with a single word, would look up with eyes that mirrored her own shock and whisper back, "That's impossible." But it wasn't. And nothing would ever be the same again. 3 months earlier, Maya Collins stood in the kitchen of her small Ohio apartment, staring at the past due bills spread across the table. The red final notice stamp seemed to mock her as she calculated figures for the 5th time, hoping the math would somehow change. "Ethan, honey, breakfast is ready," she called, glancing at the clock. 5:45 a.m. The morning light hadn't even broken through the thin curtains. Her son shuffled into the kitchen, still in his dinosaur pajamas, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Why do we have to get up so early, Mom?" "Because," Maya explained, setting a bowl of cereal before him, "Mrs. Rodriguez needs me at the diner by 6:30, and we need to drop you at before care." She kissed the top of his head. "Eat up, buddy." This was their rhythm, a carefully orchestrated dance of barely making ends meet. By day, Maya waited tables at the local diner. Evenings, she cleaned offices downtown. Weekends meant picking up shifts at the grocery store. 3 jobs, and she still couldn't keep ahead of the bills. The previous week had brought another setback. The ancient Chevy she depended on had finally died, leaving her to rely on unreliable public transportation or expensive ride shares. Each new challenge felt like another weight on her already burdened shoulders. "Mommy, Zach has a new bike," Ethan mentioned casually as she braided his shoelaces. "His daddy got it for his birthday." Maya swallowed hard. "That's nice, honey." The reminder of what she couldn't provide stung worse than her own deprivations. 2 years had passed since Tom's accident. 2 years of raising their son alone, of explaining why Daddy wasn't coming home, of crying silently after Ethan fell asleep. The grief had settled into a dull ache, but the financial struggle only worsened. That evening, after tucking Ethan into bed, Maya's phone buzzed with an email. The subject line caught her attention. "Employment opportunity, urgent response request." Maya nearly deleted it, assuming it was spam, but something made her open it. The message was from Hamilton Staffing, a prestigious agency she'd applied to months ago during a late-night job search frenzy. "We have an immediate opening for a live-in caretaker position in New York. The compensation package includes $85,000, 0 cents annual salary, full benefits, housing, and educational allowance for dependents. Client has requested someone with your specific qualifications." Maya read the email 3 times, certain there was a catch. The salary was more than triple what she currently earned across all 3 jobs. But New York? Uprooting Ethan? Leaving behind the only home they'd known? The next morning she called the agency. The position was legitimate. A wealthy client needed a live-in caretaker with healthcare experience. Maya's previous work as a nursing assistant before Ethan's birth had flagged her profile in their system. "Why me?" Maya asked the recruiter. Mr. Harrow's requirements were specific. Someone without family complications, someone reliable, discreet, and, this is unusual, someone from the Midwest. That night, Maya sat on her fire escape, watching the stars over Ohio. The eviction notice had arrived that afternoon. The refrigerator held enough food for maybe 2 more days. Ethan needed new shoes. Sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones where you already know the answer. If you've ever had to take a leap of faith for your family, hit that like button. Maya's journey into the unknown was just beginning, and the path ahead would change her life in ways she could never anticipate. The Harrow mansion stood like a fortress on the cliffs overlooking the Atlantic, its glass and stone facade reflecting the tumultuous waves below. Inside, surrounded by priceless art and cutting-edge technology, Vincent Harrow sat alone in his wheelchair, staring out at the ocean that had taken everything from him. At 41, Vincent had once commanded one of the most influential tech companies in America. Neurotech Industries had revolutionized medical interface technology under his leadership, making him a billionaire before his 35th birthday. Business magazines had called him ruthlessly brilliant, a compliment he'd once worn with pride. His home theater was larger than Maya's entire apartment. His wine cellar housed bottles worth more than her annual income. His closet contained suits that cost more than her car had. Yet while Maya's small world brimmed with laughter and bedtime stories, Vincent's mansion echoed with nothing but the sound of his wheelchair moving across marble floors. "Mr. Harrow, your physical therapist has arrived," announced Davis, his house manager, from the doorway. Vincent didn't turn from the window. "Send him away. I'm not doing the exercises today." "Sir, Dr. Reynold was quite clear about maintaining the schedule." "Did I stutter, Davis?" Vincent's voice cut like glass. "Send him away." This had become the pattern in the 2 years since the accident. Vincent, who had once given keynote speeches to thousands, who had negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, now refused to see even his closest associates. The accident had happened during a celebration cruise off the coast of Maine. Neurotech had just secured FDA approval for their neural interface system, a breakthrough that would help thousands of paralysis patients. The irony wasn't lost on Vincent. They'd been sailing in rough conditions, his decision overriding the captain's concerns. The wave hit without warning, throwing Vincent against the railing, which gave way. The fall crushed his spinal cord. He wasn't the only casualty. His business partner's nephew had been severely injured too, a 17-year-old boy who'd been invited along as a graduation present. The guilt of that knowledge haunted Vincent as much as his own condition. His recovery had revealed the true nature of relationships Vincent had believed solid. Rebecca, his fiancée of 3 years, lasted 6 months before the engagement ring was returned, placed on his bedside table with a note that said simply, "I can't do this." His parents, who had already been distant since Vincent's ruthless corporate maneuvers had contradicted their academic values, visited exactly twice. His sister called occasionally from her archaeological dig in Peru, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of obligation rather than connection. The tech world that had once revered him now whispered about his downfall. The board had politely removed him as CEO, allowing him to retain the title of founder while stripping him of any meaningful power. "Mr. Harrow," Davis interrupted again, more hesitantly this time. "The new caretaker has arrived." Vincent pressed the button on his wheelchair, turning to face the door. "I reviewed her file. College dropout, single mother, 3 mediocre jobs. Explain to me again why we hired her." "She has prior healthcare experience, sir, and she met all the others, specific requirements you listed." "From Ohio," Vincent murmured. "Fine, send her in. Let's get this over with." When Maya Collins entered his study, Vincent was struck first by how completely ordinary she looked. Average height, brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, no makeup. Nothing like the polished professionals who had previously cycled through the position. "Mr. Harrow," she said, extending her hand, before awkwardly withdrawing it when he didn't reach for it. "I'm Maya Collins." "I know who you are," Vincent replied coldly. "Davis will show you the medical equipment and emergency protocols. Your son will stay in the East Wing. You will have evenings off every third day. I expect complete professionalism and discretion." "This isn't a hotel, Miss Collins." Maya straightened her shoulders, meeting his gaze directly. "And I'm not a servant, Mr. Harrow. I'm a caretaker with medical training. I understand the job requires professionalism, but it also requires mutual respect." The air between them seemed to freeze. No one had spoken to Vincent that way since before the accident. "Interesting," he said finally. "You have a week to prove your worth, starting now." The first week in the Harrow mansion passed like a grueling marathon. Maya quickly discovered that caring for Vincent involved navigating not just his physical needs, but the minefield of his moods. Each morning began with a medical routine, checking vitals, administering medication, assisting with basic hygiene, all conducted in a frigid silence broken only by Vincent's occasional criticism. "The water is too hot," he snapped during his morning wash. "That's not how Dr. Patterson used to arrange my medications," he'd comment, watching her organize his pills. Maya would adjust without comment, but each night she collapsed into bed wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. The technical aspects of care she could handle. It was the emotional wall Vincent had built that seemed insurmountable. For Ethan, however, the mansion was a wonderland. The grounds offered endless exploration, and Davis, despite his formal demeanor, had secretly arranged for the chef to make dinosaur-shaped pancakes at breakfast. The promised educational allowance had placed Ethan in an excellent private school, where he was already thriving. "Mom, did you know Mr. Vincent has a room just for games?" Ethan exclaimed one evening. "Davis showed me. There's a giant TV and all the video games ever." "That's nice, honey, but remember we need to respect Mr. Harrow's privacy," Maya cautioned, though privately wondering why a bitter recluse maintained a room clearly designed for entertainment. On the 10th day, Maya entered Vincent's room to find him attempting to reach a book that had fallen from his nightstand. His wheelchair was just inches too far away for him to grasp it. "I'll get that," Maya offered. "I don't need your help," he growled, straining further. The effort caused him to lose balance, nearly toppling from the chair. Maya rushed forward, stabilizing him with practiced hands. Their faces came unexpectedly close, and for a brief moment Vincent's mask slipped. What Maya saw wasn't anger but profound shame. She pretended not to notice, simply retrieving the book and placing it in his lap. "Quantum Physics and Neural Networks," she read from the cover. "Light bedtime reading?" A fraction of surprise crossed his face at her attempt at humor. "It's research," he replied stiffly. "Old habits." "My husband was into physics," Maya said, adjusting his pillows. "Not that I understood half of what he talked about, but I loved how passionate he got explaining theories." Vincent studied her face. "What?" "He died 2 years ago, car accident." For the first time, Vincent's eyes held something other than disdain. "I'm sorry." The word seemed foreign on his tongue. "Have you ever met someone who built walls so high you wondered what they were protecting inside? Someone whose defenses were so formidable that the rare glimpse of vulnerability felt like witnessing something precious and endangered?" The following morning, Maya found a note with her coffee. "Physical therapy at 10. Need your assistance." A small request, but from Vincent Harrow it was practically an olive branch. When she entered the home gym at the appointed time, Vincent was already there, dressed in workout clothes rather than his usual button-down shirt. "I haven't used these equipment properly in months," he admitted, gesturing to the specialized rehabilitation machines. "Show me what I'm supposed to do." As Maya helped position his body for the exercises, she noticed the framed photographs on the wall. Younger Vincent standing on mountains, sailing boats, running marathons. His eyes followed her gaze. That was another life, he said quietly. Maybe, Maya replied, guiding his arm through a range of motion. Or maybe just another chapter of the same one. The routine of caregiving evolved over the following weeks, as Maya discovered that Vincent responded to directness rather than sympathy. When he refused his exercises, claiming they were pointless, she didn't offer platitudes about hope or recovery. "You're right," she said one morning, standing in the doorway of the gym. "These exercises won't make you walk again." Vincent's head snapped up, surprised by her bluntness. "But they will prevent muscle atrophy, reduce pain, and maintain what mobility you have," she continued. "Your choice if that matters to you." She turned to leave, but Vincent called after her. "Wait," he said. "I'll do 30 minutes. This approach, honest, without pity, began to form the foundation of their working relationship. Maya never treated Vincent like he was fragile, and slowly he began to respect her for it. During physical therapy, she introduced modifications to his exercises, drawing on techniques she'd learned while helping Tom recover from a college sports injury. "Your previous caregivers were too cautious," she explained, helping him through a new stretching routine. "They were afraid of hurting the billionaire." A ghost of a smile flickered across Vincent's face. "And you're not. I'm afraid of allowing pain to win by leaving potential untapped," she replied simply. One rainy afternoon, Ethan burst into Vincent's study without warning, a breach of protocol that made Davis visibly nervous. "Mr. Vincent," Ethan exclaimed, waving a paper, "I got an A on my science project, the one about electricity that you told me about." Maya appeared in the doorway, apologetic. "Ethan, I told you to knock first." But Vincent surprised everyone by wheeling himself closer to examine the child's project. "Let me see this masterpiece," he said, his tone lacking its usual edge. The boy proudly displayed his work, a simple circuit board, clearly influenced by concepts beyond elementary school curriculum. "You implemented the parallel circuit design," Vincent noted, genuine approval in his voice. "Smart thinking." Ethan beamed. "Mom helped with the soldering, but I did all the drawings myself." Something shifted in Vincent's eyes as he looked from the boy to Maya. "You know basic electronics?" She shrugged. "Tom was an engineer. You pick things up." That evening, Vincent asked Maya to bring dinner to his study rather than the formal dining room. As she arranged his meal, he gestured to a chair across from him. "Join me," he said. Not a question, but not quite a command either. Over dinner, their conversation moved beyond the daily logistics of care. Vincent asked about Maya's life in Ohio, listening with unexpected attention as she described her hometown, her nursing training, her meeting with Tom. "He sounds like a good man," Vincent said when she finished. "He was," Maya agreed. "Not perfect, but good where it counted." She hesitated before asking, "What about you? Were you always destined for the corporate world?" Vincent's fingers tapped against his wheelchair armrest. "My father was a physicist at Princeton. Everyone assumed I'd follow his academic path." A dry laugh escaped him. "He never forgave me for choosing business over science." "Hence the quantum physics bedtime reading," Maya ventured. Vincent nodded, surprising her with his candor. Old habits. Or maybe trying to prove something to a man who stopped paying attention long ago. This story is about to take an unexpected turn. If you're enjoying it, make sure you're subscribed to catch every moment of Maya and Vincent's unfolding journey. As autumn settled over the estate, their evenings together became a quiet ritual. Sometimes they discussed books or current events. Other times they simply worked in comfortable silence. Vincent reviewing reports from the company he no longer controlled, Maya sorting through Ethan's schoolwork. One night, as a storm battered the coast, Vincent's usual composure faltered. The crash of thunder had him gripping his wheelchair, eyes closed, breathing shallow. Without comment, Maya moved to close the curtains, blocking the lightning flashes. She turned on soft music to mask the thunder and placed a warm drink near his hand. "The accident," he said finally, voice barely audible. "It was during a storm like this." Maya sat nearby, offering presence without pressure. "I wasn't supposed to be at the helm," he continued, eyes fixed on some distant point. "The captain advised against going out, but I insisted. Celebrating the FDA approval?" His voice trailed off. "What happened?" Maya asked gently when the silence stretched too long. Vincent's gaze finally met hers, filled with a pain that transcended physical injury. "I made a decision that destroyed multiple lives, including my own." His hand gripped the armrest. "But I wasn't the only one who paid the price." The fire crackled in Vincent's study as rain continued to lash against the windows. After his initial mention of the accident, Vincent had fallen silent, locked in memories that seemed to physically pain him. Maya waited, understanding that some truths needed time to surface. "There were 6 of us on the yacht," Vincent finally continued, his voice hollow. "Myself, Rebecca, my business partner Michael, his wife, and their nephew James. Plus the captain." He swallowed hard. James was 17. Brilliant kid. MIT had already accepted him for their physics program. Vincent's hands trembled slightly as he reached for his drink. "The storm came faster than predicted. The captain wanted to return to port, but I was arrogant. We'd just received FDA approval for technology that would help paralyzed patients communicate. The irony isn't lost on me." Maya remained silent, recognizing the weight of this confession. "I took the helm," Vincent continued. "I'd sailed since childhood and thought I knew better than a professional captain with 30 years' experience." Self-loathing filled his voice. "When the wave hit, I lost control. James and I were thrown overboard. The railing gave way." His eyes closed, reliving the moment. "I hit the water at an angle that shattered my spine. James hit his head on the hull before going under. Michael jumped in after us." Vincent's voice broke. "They found me first. By the time they reached James, he'd been underwater too long. Brain damage. He's in a permanent vegetative state in a facility in Ohio." Maya felt her heart constrict. "I'm so sorry, Vincent." "Everyone said it was an accident, but we all knew the truth," he continued. "I ignored warnings. I put everyone at risk. Michael never said it was my fault, but he dissolved our partnership immediately after. His family never spoke to me again." He looked up at Maya, naked vulnerability in his expression. "Sometimes I think this," he gestured to his wheelchair, "is punishment. But it's not enough. Not for what happened to James." The revelation of Vincent's guilt explained so much. His isolation, his bitterness, his resistance to recovery. He wasn't just mourning his lost mobility, he was punishing himself. "Vincent," Maya said gently, "carrying this guilt won't help James or his family, and it won't help you heal either." "You don't understand," he replied. "Some mistakes can't be undone." The next morning, while Vincent was with his doctor, Maya entered his study to retrieve some paperwork. As she searched his desk drawer, her hand brushed against a false bottom. Curious, she slid it open, revealing a stack of old letters and photographs. The top photo showed 2 young men in graduation caps and gowns, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning widely. One was clearly a younger Vincent. The other man looked startlingly familiar. Maya's hand flew to her mouth. The second man looked exactly like her late husband, Tom. Flipping the photo over, she read the inscription, "Vincent and Thomas, Princeton, 1." Confusion flooded her mind. Tom had never mentioned knowing Vincent Harrow. He'd attended Ohio State, not Princeton, and his last name was Collins, not Harrow. With trembling hands, Maya began reading the letters. They were correspondence between Vincent's father, Edward Harrow, and another man named Richard Westfield. The letters detailed a bitter falling out between the 2 men, who had once been business partners. The final letter contained a revelation that made Maya sink into Vincent's chair, her legs no longer able to support her. "Your son Thomas was born before our disagreement, and I acknowledge my responsibility as his father. However, given the circumstances of our separation and your wife's decision to raise him as a Westfield, I believe financial support is sufficient involvement." Vincent never knew he had a half-brother. Maya's world tilted on its axis. Tom's father, the man who had raised him, wasn't his biological father. Edward Harrow was, which meant Vincent was Tom's half-brother. Her late husband was related to the man she'd been caring for, and Vincent had no idea. Can you imagine discovering that the stranger you're caring for is actually connected to your own past? That invisible threads of family and fate had been pulling you together long before you ever met? Vincent found her there, still surrounded by the evidence of decades-old secrets. "What are you doing?" he demanded, wheeling into the study. Then he saw the open drawer, the scattered photographs, the letter in Maya's hand. His face drained of color. "Who gave you permission to go through my personal things?" Anger flashed in his eyes, but beneath it lay fear. "Vincent," Maya said, her voice barely a whisper. "This man in the photo with you. This is Tom, my husband." "Impossible," Vincent scoffed, though uncertainty crept into his tone. "That's Thomas Westfield. We were roommates at Princeton until he dropped out. I never saw him again." "Tom changed his name to Collins when his mother remarried," Maya explained, the pieces falling into place. "He was raised by Richard Westfield. But according to these letters," she held up the damning evidence, "your father was his biological father. Vincent, you and Tom were half-brothers." The color drained from Vincent's face as he processed her words. "My son," Maya continued, "is your nephew." The silence that followed was deafening. Vincent stared at the photograph, then at Maya, his expression a complex mixture of disbelief, anger, and dawning recognition. "Get out," he whispered. "Vincent, please." "Get out!" His voice cracked with emotion. "Leave me alone, now." Maya backed away, clutching the photograph to her chest. As she closed the door, she heard the sound of glass shattering against the wall. For 3 days, Vincent refused to see Maya. He locked himself in his wing of the mansion, communicating only through Davis, who delivered terse instructions about medication schedules and appointments. Maya considered packing their bags and returning to Ohio, but something held her back. The weight of this revelation anchored her to the mansion, demanding resolution before she could leave. On the 4th day, she found a note slipped under her door. "My study, 8 p.m. When she arrived, Vincent sat by the window, the room dark except for a single lamp. The shattered remains of what had been a crystal decanter had been cleared away. On the desk lay the letters and photographs, arranged in chronological order. "I've been reading them all day," Vincent said without turning, "trying to understand." Maya took a seat across from him, heart pounding. "And do you?" "My father was—" Vincent paused, searching for words. "A brilliant physicist, a mediocre human being." He finally turned to face her. "Did Tom know about Edward being his biological father?" Maya shook her head. "No. He believed Richard Westfield was his father. He never mentioned Princeton or you." Vincent's laugh held no humor. "Why would he, after what my father did to his family?" He pushed one of the letters toward Maya. It detailed how Edward Harrow had used Richard Westfield's research to secure a lucrative patent, cutting his partner out of the profits that should have been shared. "My father built his fortune on stolen ideas," Vincent said flatly. "When Richard threatened legal action, my father countered with evidence that Richard's wife, Tom's mother, had been unfaithful with him. He effectively destroyed their marriage and their partnership in one blow." Maya struggled to process the complexity of this decades-old betrayal. "But why would Tom change his name? Why drop out of Princeton?" "Because my father made sure the Westfield name was ruined in academic circles," Vincent explained. "He claimed Richard had falsified research data. No one would touch the Westfield name after that. Tom must have changed his identity to escape the shadow." The cruelty of it took Maya's breath away. "Did you know about any of this?" Vincent's hands gripped his wheelchair until his knuckles whitened. "I knew my father had a falling out with his former partner. I didn't know the details. I didn't know about Tom." His voice dropped. "By the time I found these letters after my father's death, Tom had disappeared. I tried to find him, to make amends somehow, but it was as if he'd vanished." "He moved to Ohio. Started over," Maya said softly. "Met me, became an engineer at a small firm. He never talked about his past." Vincent's eyes met hers, filled with a new kind of pain. "And then I took him from you too." Maya stared at him. "What are you talking about?" "The boating accident," Vincent said, his voice hollow. "James, the boy who was injured. He's Michael's nephew. Michael was my business partner, the one who helped me oust my father from the company board when I discovered his unethical practices." He paused. "Michael is Richard Westfield's brother. James is Tom's cousin." The connection snapped into place with devastating clarity. The family Vincent had inadvertently harmed through his recklessness was his own estranged family, Tom's family. "The accident had nothing to do with Tom's death," Maya said firmly. "But don't you see?" Vincent's voice rose with emotion. "It's all connected. My father's sins, my arrogance, the same pattern repeated across generations. I never knew Tom, and now I've robbed his son of a father." Maya stood abruptly. "Stop it. Tom died because a drunk driver ran a red light. Not because of your family history, not because of some cosmic pattern. You don't get to claim responsibility for that too." Her directness seemed to cut through his spiral of self-recrimination. "Then why are you here?" he asked quietly. "Why did you apply for this position in Ohio? Why were you chosen out of hundreds of applicants?" Maya had been asking herself the same questions. "I don't know. Coincidence? Fate? Or my subconscious recognizing something in your application? Your last name, Collins, wouldn't have triggered any connection to Westfield. But something drew me to select you." Vincent's gaze was intense. "What if some part of me was searching for the family I lost?" The possibility hung between them, fraught with implications for their growing connection. What had been building between them, friendship, understanding, perhaps something more, now seemed tainted by the shadow of these revelations. The next few minutes will reveal how these two broken souls respond to this life-changing truth. Will they be torn apart by the past, or find healing in their unexpected connection? Morning light streamed through the windows of the physical therapy room as Vincent pushed through a set of exercises that would have exhausted him weeks earlier. Maya stood nearby, monitoring his form and offering adjustments. 10 more, she encouraged, as Vincent's arms trembled with exertion. 20, he countered, determination etched on his face. 2 weeks had passed since the revelation of their connection. After that night in the study, they'd maintained a careful distance, processing the implications of their intertwined histories. But avoidance solved nothing, and the work of caregiving continued. It was Ethan who inadvertently bridged the gap between them. Finding Vincent alone in the garden one evening, the boy had approached with innocent curiosity. "Mom says you knew my dad," Ethan said, settling himself on the bench beside Vincent's wheelchair. Vincent froze, unprepared for the directness of children. Yes, a long time ago." "What was he like back then?" Ethan asked, eyes wide with wonder. In that moment, Vincent made a choice. He could retreat behind walls of guilt, or he could offer this child a gift. Memories of a father he barely remembered. He chose the latter. "Your dad was brilliant," Vincent began hesitantly. "He could solve mathematical equations faster than anyone I knew. He loved thunderstorms. He'd watch them from our dorm window instead of taking shelter." Ethan's face lit up with each new detail, and something in Vincent lightened as well. Speaking of Tom as a person, not as a symbol of guilt or regret, allowed Vincent to reclaim parts of his own past he'd locked away. Maya found them there an hour later, Ethan laughing as Vincent recounted a college prank involving the dean's prized koi pond. The next morning, Vincent appeared at breakfast, wheeling himself to the table where Maya and Ethan ate, a space he'd previously avoided. "I'd like to increase my therapy sessions," he announced without preamble. "Twice daily, if you're willing." Maya studied his face, noting the new resolve in his eyes. "What changed?" Vincent looked at Ethan, then back to her. "I realize I've been punishing myself by remaining static. True atonement requires action, not martyrdom." That shift marked the beginning of their healing, not just physical, but emotional. Vincent attacked his rehabilitation with renewed purpose. He consulted specialists about experimental treatments, enrolled in clinical trials for neural interface devices similar to those his company had developed. The changes went beyond physical therapy. Vincent began reviewing neurotech's research again, offering consultations via video conference. He reconnected with former colleagues, his mind engaging with the world beyond his mansion walls. One evening, as Maya helped Vincent stretch after a particularly grueling session, he asked quietly, "Do you think we would have met if not for the accident? If not for all of this?" Maya considered the question. "I don't know, but we did meet. That's what matters now." "When I first saw you," Vincent admitted, "something felt familiar. I didn't understand it then." "And now?" Maya asked, her hands pausing on his shoulders. "Now I think perhaps we were always meant to find each other, just not in the way anyone could have predicted." Their first kiss happened without planning or discussion, a natural culmination of moments building between them. After a breakthrough in Vincent's mobility that allowed him to stand with support for several minutes, the triumph of the moment carried them into an embrace that neither wanted to end. "This is complicated," Maya whispered against his mouth. "Everything worthwhile is," he replied. They moved forward cautiously, aware of the complex emotions entangled with their growing feelings. What began as professional care evolved into partnership, then into love, not despite their shared history, but perhaps because of it. They understood each other's pain in ways no one else could. Vincent's relationship with Ethan transformed as well. What began with stories about Tom expanded into chess lessons, science experiments, and weekend excursions. For a child who had lost his father, Vincent became something unique, not a replacement, but a bridge to both past and future. One Sunday afternoon, Vincent called them into his study. On his desk lay legal documents and a photograph album. "I've been in contact with James's family," he announced. "After years of silence, Michael agreed to meet with me. We've established a foundation for research into neural recovery, funded by my personal fortune." Maya squeezed his hand, recognizing the significance of this step. "There's more," Vincent continued. "I've spoken with the board at Neurotech. I'm returning as an advisor, focusing on patients like James. And," he slid a folder toward Maya, "I've had my father's legal team track down all patents that originated with Richard Westfield's research. The royalties have been calculated, with interest, and will be placed in a trust for Ethan." Tears filled Maya's eyes as she understood the magnitude of what Vincent was doing, not erasing the past, but honoring it, making amends where possible. Have you ever witnessed how truth, however painful, can ultimately heal the deepest wounds? How facing the very thing we fear most can set us free in ways we never imagined possible? That evening, as they watched the sunset from the cliffside garden, Vincent took Maya's hand. "I spent 2 years believing my life ended with the accident," he said quietly. "I never imagined it was actually beginning." 1 year later, the autumn leaves painted the Harrow estate in gold and crimson as guests arrived for the garden reception. Maya adjusted a flower arrangement on the main table, watching as Ethan, now 8, guided guests to their seats with the serious responsibility of a much older child. "Mrs. Harrow?" Davis approached with his usual formal demeanor, though a smile now occasionally broke through his professional facade. "The guests from Ohio have arrived." Maya's heart leapt. "Thank you, Davis. Please show them to the guest house so they can freshen up." The past 12 months had transformed their lives in ways none of them could have predicted. The most visible change was in Vincent himself. While he still relied on his wheelchair for longer distances, he now stood and walked with the assistance of specialized braces for short periods, the result of both innovative technology and relentless determination. His physical transformation was matched by his emotional evolution. The man who had once isolated himself now chaired quarterly meetings at Neurotech, advocating for accessibility innovations and patient-centered design. The bitterness that had defined him had given way to purpose. From the patio doors, Vincent emerged, walking carefully with his carbon fiber braces and a single cane. His progress across the lawn was slow but steady, each step a victory over what doctors had once declared impossible. Watching him, Maya felt the familiar swell of pride and love. Their wedding 6 months ago had been small and private, just Ethan, Davis, and a few close friends. Today's gathering was different. Today they welcomed members of both the Harrow and Westfield families, some meeting for the first time in decades. Michael Westfield approached Vincent, his wife Jessica at his side. The two men, once partners and then estranged, clasped hands with the weight of shared history between them. "James is settled in the guest house," Michael said. "The trip tired him, but he wanted to come." Vincent nodded, emotion flickering across his face. While James remained largely non-responsive, the neural interface technology Vincent had helped develop now allowed him to communicate basic needs and feelings, a small miracle that had helped bridge the gulf between the families. "Thank you for bringing him," Vincent replied. "It means everything that you're all here." Across the lawn, Ethan was deep in conversation with his cousins from the Westfield side, children he hadn't known existed until recently. Maya watched them play, marveling at how quickly they'd bonded, as though the missing years were nothing more than a brief interruption. Later, as the gathering moved to dinner under string lights in the garden, Vincent stood with the support of his cane to address their guests. "A year ago, I believed my life was defined by loss," he began, his voice steady. "I had lost my mobility, my direction, and connections to the people who mattered most." His eyes found Maya's. "What I couldn't see was that every ending makes space for new beginnings." He gestured to the tables where Harrows and Westfield sat together. "Our families were divided by pride, greed, and misunderstanding. It took an accident and the extraordinary courage of one woman to help us find our way back to each other." Maya moved to stand beside him, her hand finding his. "Tom should be here," Vincent acknowledged, his voice softening as he mentioned his half-brother. "We lost the chance to heal that relationship in this lifetime. But through Maya and Ethan, his legacy continues. Through the foundation that bears his name, his impact extends to families facing similar challenges." As the evening progressed, Maya found a quiet moment with Vincent on the garden terrace, overlooking the ocean that had once taken so much from him. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" she asked, leaning into his embrace. "Never," he admitted. "I thought I knew exactly what my life would be. Success, achievement, legacy. I never planned for love or family or redemption." Maya smiled, watching Ethan laugh with his newfound relatives. "The best things in life are rarely planned." This extraordinary journey of healing reminds us that family can be found in the most unexpected places, and that even the deepest wounds can heal with time, truth, and love. If this story touched you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it, because sometimes the broken paths lead us exactly where we need to be.